Hello. Today I'm going to bench start a Type 4 motor. VW used it in several buses and also the 411 and maybe a few other applications. But mostly it was used in Porsche 914s between 1970 and 1976. It's a four-cylinder motor. It originally came with fuel injection, but the fuel injection accepted very few modifications, so if you wanted to increase horsepower, it just didn't work. This motor has dual Weber 40 IDF, I think they're IDF carburetors. It has the distributor's been changed to work with the carburetors, and I built the motor several years ago for a project 914 that never happened, and it's been sitting around for several years. I actually built it from parts that were laying around the shop, and I don't remember what's in it. I believe they're 1.8 heads with new valve seats and bigger valves and better valve springs, 2-liter jugs, new crank, and the cam is a carbureted cam. I believe it's a Web 86B grind, which is a street grind for performance, but it's not a race cam. Everything was balanced: the crank, the rods, the pistons, the flywheel, everything is balanced. And never been in a car. I've just started it occasionally on the bench to keep things lubricated and moving in it. You can see the motor compared to a VW application. A VW, if you were to put this in a VW Bug, their flywheel is smaller, and therefore the transmission doesn't bolt up to it exactly. The starter wouldn't line up with the teeth on the flywheel. Their flywheel has a single bolt in the center, where this has 5 bolts. But Kennedy Engineering does make an adapter flywheel that'll bolt to this motor but work with the VW transmission, and I believe there's an adapter plate as well that goes with it. And in the VW application, this would be the front of the motor, where in the 914 this is the rear of the motor. So in the 914 the exhaust comes out here, but if you put it on a VW, the exhaust would come out the opposite end, and where this motor mount is out of a 914 and it's a front motor mount, you'd have to modify that to make a rear motor mount for a VW Bug. And the linkage right now pulls toward the rear for the carburetor, and it might take a little work to do that. I believe the exhaust can simply be reversed. I don't think you can see it very well here, but I think you can take that off and simply reverse it, and the exhaust would come out the back end of it if it was in the Bug, and then you could put a muffler on it or whatever you want to do. What I've done here is I have the ring off of a 914 transmission. I cut it off the transmission. It'd be like cutting off part of the bell housing on a Chevy or something like that, leaving the starter mount. So that allows me to put the starter on there, and it's just the very edge of the transmission there with the starter attached, so I can run it on the bench. Then over here I have a fuel source and a battery. Battery goes to the starter with a starting switch, and it also goes to the ignition with an on-off switch. I've got a fuel pump over here, which is just a small facet fuel pump, fuel regulator, and fuel filter. This runs about 2 to 3 pounds of pressure in the fuel system is all, and I've got set at 2 pounds right now. And then I've got an oil pressure gauge here to show the fuel pressure while it's running. And another thing, these motors tend to build up crankcase pressure from blow-by, so the stock crankcase ventilation is not adequate, and this has a bug pack on it which has a crankcase ventilator come from the case and from each valve cover. If you run this very long, like when I was racing, if you run it for 30 minutes or more, there would be enough blow-by that would fill this up, and you'd start to puke oil out of there, so you'd have to have a catch can. If you go for more than 30 minutes, you have to stop and add oil to the motor because you've already puked a quart of oil. If you don't have this type of bug pack, you tend to blow out valve cover gaskets and puke oil through there because you just don't have enough relief of the pressure. Anyway, let's see if it'll get started. I'm going to turn on my switch here. That's the fuel pump. Now let's see if it'll start. Few pumps of the accelerator pump. A little bit cold-blooded because there's no choke mechanism, so it takes a little bit to warm up, and once it warms up, this is not tied down, it's simply sitting on a bench. So it's nice and steady, it doesn't vibrate, doesn't move. Like I say, it's not tied down. It idles good. Oil pressure at a slow idle is 20, but it'll hit 60 pounds oil pressure with speed. It ramps up very quickly. And that's it, the bench running of a Porsche 914 4-cylinder.